Welcome, everybody. Good to have you here with us today. We're really looking forward to this webinar. It's been fun preparing for it with Catherine. Okay, so we're going to look at why global recruitment. Why should we do it? Why do people need cultural intelligence and what it actually is? And how does it apply to your global recruiters and to your candidates? And how do we know who's got it? Because that's the real challenge, isn't it? So let's get right onto it. Why should we recruit globally? Because seriously, it's probably easier to stay just local. So I'm going to just pull these up and let Catherine tell us about some of these components, about why we should consider recruiting globally.
Yeah, there's a number of reasons, and we've put some bullet points up here. So sometimes if I'm recruiting for a firm in a developing market or a newer market, where that firm is working with global clients, they might need a match in terms of global experience to match the global client requirements, and to understand how a global organisation might think. And if it's in a market where perhaps there hasn't been a huge amount of global activity, it might be important to put somebody in there to really understand how to interact, how to do business with a global organisation. In some markets, there is a lack of certain skills and certain experience. That could be due to the education or the history of what people have traditionally been involved in. Again, it might be a market that's developed into a new area where there just hasn't been the experience up until then in a particular field. Again, I suppose more on the global side, I mean, we had an interesting one recently where a firm said to us, we need the best person to do this for our global firm. We actually don't mind where they are. Just go and find us the best person in the world, and wherever they are, we'll let them stay there, or if they want to move, that's fine.
Wow.
So some companies are saying, let's just get the best talent at something, and let's not worry where they are. That's going to be relatively rare, but it's an extreme example.
Yes. So it really opens up your options.
Yeah. Now, another thing is firms thinking about moving people internally. So not necessarily recruiting, but more looking at secondments or traineeships to increase the diversity and the diversity understanding within the organisations. But we may be asked to help with benchmarking or helping people think about, well, are there people in the market who are suitable? If not, what might work internally? What kind of person might we need to think about moving internally as well?
And if you're wanting somebody who really understands the market, but you haven't perhaps established yourself there, you might want somebody back in head office who's sort of explaining the market somewhere else to the people.
Yeah. I had a great conversation the other day with somebody who works in Singapore. Is from Australia originally, and she was laughing at her US headquarters that talked about Asia being just Asia, just one block.
Right.
They're all the same. Yeah. It's Asia. They're all the same in Asia. And actually, if they could increase their understanding of the fact that every Asia market is so different, that would be a real competitive advantage to them and help them understand diversity. So she'd taken it upon herself to try and educate back that wasn't quite the same.
Yes.
And you've put the last point here, development for the future. Is thinking about where does a client or an organisation want to get to, and again, what talent does it need to get it to its future state that it wants to be at, and where is that talent best pulled from?
Yes. But the issue about global recruitment in terms of bringing people on board or moving people around is that it isn't easy. Right. So there are we've all heard the war stories about people who've been brought to a location and within 6 weeks have packed up and gone home, which obviously is a very expensive mistake to make.
Hugely expensive. I mean, the cost of recruitment anyway is expensive. And that's not just about paying a fee to somebody like me to help. Even if you're doing direct recruitment yourself, it's still about the time it takes. Typically, if it's a new role, it will have taken time to scope out that role and think about the requirements. So there's been a lot of time invested in that.
Yes.
Then the time it takes to go to market, to review applications, to do interviews, to then hire, to then wait for the person to join. All that is, I suppose, lost opportunity cost, as well as cost of time. So it isn't easy, but then to get it wrong is a really expensive. You've then got to go through the whole thing again.
That's right. And the other factor almost is somebody who's not right for the role but is put in the role can do incredible damage to your reputation globally.
Yeah, to your reputation, to the team around you.
There's been some wonderful stories coming out of China about that recently with people who've made some very big cultural faux pas and the organisations have had to pull them back home. So, we can laugh about it, but I'm sure the people in those situations weren't laughing.
No, it's anyone making any career move, even if it's to a different firm down the road, it's still a massive move for that person, and that person needs as much support and as much information as possible.
Absolutely. People with high CQ, the research shows, are more likely to perform well on a job. They're more likely, as expats, they're more likely to stay longer, which is an important part of job performance. They also have better well-being because they're managing the stresses that are sometimes inherent in a more diverse situation better. And they are more able to build trust with people who come from different cultures to themselves. So these are really important findings. So let's have a think about recruitment generally and perhaps from a local perspective. And I just took these comments down from Catherine. I'm sure she could put it even better than this, about what she thinks the ultimate goal of recruitment is, just from a broad recruitment perspective, not speaking about globally. So it's basically, according to Catherine Mountford, finding the best person for the role and for the firm.
Yeah, who's going to stay and give the best return?
What does global recruitment add to that mix? So if we think about the role, I was just speaking with somebody yesterday who was talking about the difference in the director of marketing role in his time in China and the director of marketing role in his time in Australia.
Yeah.
And he said the director and marketing role in Australia was doing the same sort of work as the manager level.
Yeah.
Whereas in China, they would never have got their hands dirty with some of that stuff that the person here was doing. So the role can be a really tricky thing because
it's completely different.
You can't go by the title.
No, you can't go by the title. You can't even go by the job description. Again, it's where you really need to drill and grill.
Oh, wow.
But you need to find out as much as you can. And I mean, there are some less than brilliant recruiters. I think we've all come across many who will literally just take a job title and a job spec and hope it sticks. But my view is that's so far removed from what you need to do. So yes, you're absolutely right. You need to ask as many questions as you can about where they're sitting in the organisation, what their scope is of influence, how many people they're managing, that same level of detail.
Yeah. And then with the candidate, we'd add in the cultural intelligence component that we'll look at in a moment.
Yeah.
And again, the organisation. So you've worked with global organisations, and it must be interesting to see that sometimes the Hong Kong arm is perhaps very similar or very different to the Australian arm, or
it is organisation specific as well as general, but there are some generals. There are. Let me take the international law firms as an example, and because they're top of mind for me. And my personal experience, having worked at Linklaters in London, my role doing business development in Hong Kong for Linklaters, same firm, same clients, same type of work, totally different experience. Because the organisation structure was different, the support functions were much more lean, the way they interacted with clients were different. So even moving internally in the same organisation, it is very different.
Yeah. And then we've got to add in the big factor, which is the location and all the differences that location brings.
Yeah.